Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Let's Just Talk. Our guests today are Pat and Rick Stirnkorb of the Bible Comes to Life Travel and Education Center. Well, I want to welcome you to my show. Back again, we're friends and have been forever. And we went to Israel together a few years ago, right, Rick?
We did.
And you filmed it, right?
I did. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And Pat, you really loved it in Israel so much. When the opportunity came and we met with Omer Eshel, you jumped on it, didn't you?
I did. It's addictive.
It's addictive.
It's addictive.
Because going back to where Christ was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing not only archaeological sites, and Rick, let me ask you this. What impressed you the most in the archaeological sites? Not just the parts about Christianity and Jesus, but what about the archaeological sites? Were they exciting?
Well, just the fact that, over 2,000 years ago, stuff still exists there today. And to be able to go back that far in history and see things that haven't been torn apart. I mean, there's parts of Israel have been destroyed several times, but then things that are still there today that were there thousands of years ago.
Right. And Pat, what's the most amazing thing in your mind that excites you about Israel, that it's addictive?
Every time we go, whether it's 3 years, 4 years, a year, 6 months, there's something new. They're always finding something new. They're discovering new things every day. With the first time we went, they knew Magdala where it was, but there was nothing there. This time when we went, there's a whole village there that they've uncovered. Right,
and it's amazing how fast they uncover things in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed with all of it when I went, but I'm doing something similar, but not with just a Christian tour situation,
right?
Because we have a Chef You and I show.
Right. Israel has something for everyone.
That's
it's
right.
Not just biblical history. It's archaeological. It's political. It's the history of the country. It's the food and the culture that's there now, which has totally evolved since they became a state in 1948.
Right. Rick, what amazes me is that the food is so delicious. Tell me about the food and what happened to you the first time?
Well, the first time we went was with a cooking tour kind of situation. We went to chefs all around the country that were well known, that you cooked with.
Yes.
And we had so much food, it was crazy. I gained 10 pounds while I was there the first time.
Well, I can imagine the Dex restaurant where...
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, that food was out of this
That was
world,
amazing.
right?
It always is. We've been there every time.
Every time. And I love the owner so much. She's such a doll baby.
She is.
And
Yes.
she was so gracious to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing I love about Israel is that they're so gracious. Would you say that?
They're very gracious, but they're appreciative of America, and I think people don't realize that. When we went 2 years ago, the lady that works in the Dex restaurant, her name's Talia, she walked out with us to the bus, and she said, I just want you guys to know how much we appreciate you being here and how much Israel appreciates America. And she's been there for 20 years. She's a New England Jew. And,
she's from New England.
She is.
Well, that's
and so
wonderful.
we walked out to the bus, and she said, I just have something to give you. And she climbed up on the bus with us, and there was 30 people on the bus, and she starts singing, You're Standing on Holy Ground.
Oh, wow.
And she had the most beautiful soprano voice. You can't even imagine. It just filled the entire bus, and people had goosebumps, and they were tears. It was incredible.
Right.
And it's just a memory that now, this time when we went, I said that was such a memory for people. And she stood at our table in the middle of this busy restaurant and sang to us again.
Wow.
So it's just, that's their culture, though. They love America. They love people. They're
Right.
used to catering to tourists. It's, a lot of their income comes from tourism.
And that's the most important thing, I think. I think when we went on the first tour, it was totally different than what that you do with the Bible Comes to Life.
Correct.
Am I correct?
Yes. Oh, totally different.
Yes.
Because it was a government tour to start off with, and we were going as media people.
Right.
And so it was totally different. It's going to be interesting planning this new tour.
Yes.
I'm excited about it because our television show, The Chef You and I, has really evolved over the last few years. And so let's talk a little bit about The Bible Comes to Life. On your perspective first, Rick, what do you think about The Bible Comes to Life?
Well, it's a fairly new company, and they started an educational type tour. So
Right.
it's a biblically based educational tour where you just go into deep Bible studies and learn a lot more than you would just, reading the Bible. The guides are just incredible there. They go through, I think, 2 years of training.
They do.
And then after they get their certificate, it's a state certificate. They got to be certified by the state to be a tour guide.
Right.
And then they come to the Bible Life, comes to life, and goes to some more additional training there.
Right.
Right.
So the guides are amazing, and the stuff that you learn is just outstanding, really.
And Pat, how does it feel? You've been there almost a year now, right?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah,
you've
it'll be
been.
2 years in October.
Seems like I can't remember.
Yeah.
I ended up doing a tour, unfortunately, not with the Bible Comes to Life, because we had to accommodate my parish priest who wanted, my pastor that wanted to go to Italy. So I did not go, but this year or next year I'm planning on doing a thing for my radio and television show, which I think would be a lot of fun. And do some different things. Besides doing some Christian programs
Sure.
and political, I want to mix it,
Uh-huh.
and make it fun
I
for
think it
other
will be.
people.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Because there's some people that are not Christians, but they're faithful or whatever, and they're more archaeologically minded, or they're
Sure.
politically conservative or whatever, and they just want to go.
Right.
Or we've got foodies.
Yes.
Which are
Which
my
would be
favorite
great.
people in the world. Loved. I couldn't believe the quality of food that we had,
It was amazing.
and the hotels.
The
And I
hotels
saw
are
the one
incredible.
hotel that you sent me, that one of our John Dash is going on
Yes.
from our network, and it's gorgeous.
They cater to tourists, so their hotels are used to feeding 800 or 900 people at a time. Just rows and rows of food that's unbelievable, and
Incredible.
everything is delicious. And you have to remember that they grow 98% of everything that they have in their own country. They only import 4 items, which is cocoa, coffee, sugarcane, and a little bit of beef. Everything else comes from their country. They grow it all there. They have all their vegetables, 6 different growing zones. It's an amazing country. When God chose it for his people, he made it so that they would be self-sufficient, and they are.
Remember manna from heaven.
That's exactly
I
right.
know. And that's one of the things, and a lot of people, unfortunately we have fake news out there, and so a lot of people are scared to go. And if I remember correctly, a few years ago, somebody I know called me up and said, "Are we really going?" And I kept on saying, "It's really a safe place." Did you find that out?
Yes, it is safe, and I've done some research because that is one of the questions that we get more often than not. How safe is it? And just to give you an idea, I just did some research on it today because I've known the numbers, but they change, of course. So far year to date, so this is the middle of July, in Chicago, they have had 102 murders since the beginning of July. In Israel, all of this entire year, they've had 83.
That's
So when
pretty
people
unreal.
say, "Oh my gosh, is it safe there?" To say that you're afraid to go, it's like saying I'm not going to go to Cleveland because they have murders in Chicago. We don't go any place near any place that's happening. Gaza Strip is the
Right.
hotbed, and we don't go anywhere near that.
Well, here's the other thing. They have a protection over Israel that a lot of people don't know. And the other thing is, when you go to the airport, do you remember when we went with the government people? We didn't know that there were guns in certain
Right.
points that were watching, and they're watching us all the time.
All the time.
And both men and women
Mm-hmm.
go into the military. And have you been back to the area where we went that one time to see the soldiers?
At the Syrian border, yeah.
The Syrian border.
Uh-huh.
Did you get to do that again?
We did.
And I felt safe.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
The kids go in straight from high school. So the
Yeah.
boys go in for 3 years, the girls go in for 2 years, unless there's a war, and then they go in for 22 months.
Right.
And they all learn to use a gun, which is why the rates of crime is down, because everybody knows that they know how to use a gun. And so it's a great deterrent for them, because they don't know, everybody doesn't carry a gun, and you have to have still concealed carry and all the things that we do here, even more so.
They do there.
They do there. But they are familiar with it. So they have things out in the open. There's no shoplifting. There's nothing like that we have here that's rampant. They don't have, because people know everybody has a gun, and they don't do the stuff.
Well, I think one of the pictures that you brought with us today is from what? Can you tell me what it is?
Yes, this is a first century tomb that's in Ella Valley. Our CEO, Omer Eshel, lives very near there, and there's a park there, and he took us up to it by golf cart.
Ooh, that's
and
awesome.
We saw lots of sheep and everything roaming, sheep and goats,
yeah,
roaming around. And he took us to this place, and there's only 3 or 4 of them in all of Israel. This is the only one that's in the territory that we could get to, and a location where we get to. And it's a first century tomb, and it actually still has the stone in place. Are intact. So when we talk about when Jesus was in the tomb and the angels rolled the stone away, this actually still has the stone.
Wow.
This is a first century tomb, so it's more than 2,000 years old. And about 10 years ago, it was ransacked for the first time. So until then, it had not been touched. And so we were able, because it's open, the tomb is open, and we were able to walk inside of it.
Was it really exciting?
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. It's about an 8 by 10 room, maybe.
Probably, yeah.
And at one side of it's all carved out of limestone. There's intricate detail inside of the tomb. It's, borders on it, hand carved out of the stone. And you get to see it. And when you go in, there's a huge big archway, and that's where the sarcophagus would be for the head of the family. It was there.
Right.
It had been knocked off. The lid had been knocked off of, which is all stone, had to weigh 500 pounds.
How did they do it?
I have no idea. But then the government, after it was ransacked, the government came in and took the bones out, of course, so it's not there.
Of course.
On the other side was the ossuary, which is where they put the bones after they've dried, and they move them to that. On the other side was 3 niches, and on that side is where they would bury the people first and then move them to the ossuary after that. So we saw the entire family tomb in this one thing, and it was just amazing to see, because the stone is what was so cool to know that that's really what they did. They rolled the stone away. The angels came and rolled the stone away for Jesus, he rolled it away probably, but
Right.
to show it, to see it is just unbelievable.
And we're going to talk more about all of your travels in our next segment. Can you give your website and where people can go to find out about the tours to Israel?
Okay, so our master website is the one that's out of Israel, and that's the one we always direct people to. It's TBCTL www. So our www.tbctl.com. .com. So just go to the master website, tbctl.com.
Want to do that again?
Yeah. So we direct everybody to go to our master website, which is based out of Israel, and that address is www.tbctl.com, which is The Bible Comes to Life. So go there and you'll find out all information about it.
And it has wonderful videos on it too, am I correct?
Lots of videos, because we're an education center. So pastors from all around the world download our materials. There's videos, there's articles, there's instructions, there's lessons that they can download in countries that they wouldn't be able to. We're on the, there's a Muslim radio station that allows us to be on there, because in our name it says Travel and Education Center.
That's right.
So they look at it as a travel thing. They don't look at it as a ministry. So the pastors can go on there and download materials.
We'll be right back with Pat and Rick Stirnkorb after these messages. We're back with Rick and Pat Stirnkorb in their wonderful trip. And actually, what other things did you see and do on your last trip? So let's talk about that. This is amazing. This looks like a pyramid. Is it?
It is. It's the only pyramid that they have ever found in all of Israel.
Wow.
And they are getting ready to dig out the side of it. They just started the places where they're going to start digging to find out who is in it, what family is in there. They know it was a wealthy Jewish family from
Right.
around the 1st century again.
Wow.
Same thing with the tomb. It's in the same general area of the tomb. So there was a village there. I don't know what the name of the village was or if they even know, but there was definitely a village there. There's another graveyard there, and there are some buildings there that's still covered. They haven't done anything with yet. So pretty
Right.
interesting.
Okay, so then what's next? What is this wonderful thing right here?
This was like one of the coolest things that we've seen since we've been in Israel. It's called a columbarium. And when he first took it to us, he took us to a military base that used to be a military base from
Right.
2,000 years ago. And we went down into these caves, and the caves have holes all over the whole entire thing. And that one cave we were in had 2,800 holes carved out of the limestone. When you look at this picture, you'll be able to see different shapes, different sizes.
What for?
Well, that's what I'm going to tell you.
Go ahead.
It's a place where pigeons and doves would go.
It's early early century email system.
Email, yes.
Email system. Good idea.
So what they did was each homing pigeons always go back to the place that they were born.
Oh, wow.
So as they would travel, they would take cages filled with birds with them from one village to the next, or take them into the city, into Jerusalem, and then people would buy those birds. So let's say they came from Magdala, and so they're in the Golan Heights. And so the military bases used this because they said, okay, we want to send a message to Magdala. So they would take one of the birds from one of these holes, and they had them netted down and say, this bird is from Magdala. We're going to put a note around its ankle, and off it would go, and it would go to Magdala.
Really?
And it would come in, and they'd have a note on the ankle. And they've actually found bones of the birds that still have messages attached.
Wow.
And then
That's
the other
really
thing they use it for, there's hundreds of these all over Israel. Not just one or two, but they're huge, and there's hundreds of the holes inside of the caves. And some of them used them just for breeding the birds because they ate them. They used them in sacrifices. They used the manure for their fields. So they used them for a lot of different purposes. But during the military, they used it to send messages back and forth, which was so
Kind
cool.
of like the catacombs in the sense because they carved out the catacombs as
Yeah.
well. And people would stay down there because of war or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting. The two most impressive things when I went were the Sea of Galilee and also the Dead Sea. Rick, I want you to talk about the Sea of Galilee. It's not really a sea, is it?
Well, you would think it was. Reading the Bible, it's all surrounded. Most of the Bible is surrounded with the Sea of Galilee, where the fishermen were at. That's where all the disciples came from.
Right.
So I was expecting this gigantic body of water when we went. And there's several spots that you can go up on top of the mountains, overlook, and see the entire thing. It's like 9 miles long.
Right.
So I was kind of surprised at the size of it, but the amount of history that comes out of that is incredible.
Right. And I loved the movie Risen because you'd see the disciples walking with Christ. And when we were there, it was so amazing to throw that net out.
Yes.
And I can imagine throwing the net out and not getting anything in there. And then when Christ did it, the fish basically almost
Jumped
broke
into
the nets.
the nets, didn't
Right.
they?
And tell me, what was your biggest excitement about that part of the Sea of Galilee?
Well, just to know the incredible history that comes from that area. There's, you go around the Sea of Galilee, and there's story after story after story as you travel around the Sea of Galilee in biblical history. It's just
Now, let's talk about the Dead Sea, Pat. That's really exciting.
The Dead Sea is incredible. The Dead Sea is the lowest place on earth. At the sea level, it is 1,338 feet below sea level. Then when you go down to the bottom of it, it's another 1,200 feet. It's the lowest place on earth that they can get to inside of water. I guess somebody said that's probably in the ocean there are deeper spots, but as far as a body of water and the sea level, this is the absolute lowest place on earth.
And don't go out and float after you
Shaved your
shaved
legs.
your legs, women. That
So-
doesn't work.
What's neat about it is that it comes from the Jordan River, and as it comes down, that's what really fills in the Dead Sea. It used to be called the Salt Sea. It's 33.7% salt in the water. Just to give you an idea, the normal ocean is 3.5%. This is 10 times more than what it is. And it makes you float. So you can float on the water. It's hysterically funny to watch the people walk out the first time, and you walk out and all of a sudden your feet just pop up. You cannot keep your feet down.
Because you can't keep your feet down.
Right,
at all.
it's crazy. And so we were able to experience that every time we've been there. It's an amazing place. And it is dead. There's nothing that grows in it. There's no fish or plants or anything. It's a dead body of water. And it is shrinking, unfortunately, and they're trying to figure out what they can do to add more water to it so that it stays. The shores are shrinking back about 1 meter a year.
Has it
so
changed
it's
quite a
big.
bit since you were there?
No, I can't really tell a difference. You can't really tell with the naked eye. I guess you could if you went over and over again. You say, oh, this is where it was, this is where it was. We didn't really notice it. It's amazing, though, beautiful, that it looks like white sand, and it's salt.
It is salt.
It's just incredible. It's a really neat place to go. So it's definitely worth going to
Well,
the Dead Sea.
tell me the other things that really impressed you this last time.
We went to different sites than we had seen before. Beit Shen is a huge city that the ruins are mostly intact. You'll see a bathhouse and public toilets, which you don't see anyplace else.
That's pretty cool.
It's really neat. The amphitheater that's there is huge, and when we were there, we have pictures of it showing they were filming a movie there because it's in such good shape.
Right.
Columns all over the place, public bathhouses where they would go in, and they had seats all the way around where people would sit for their bath. The men would go in and do their bathing and talking and everything that they did. And then up and down the streets are huge columns. Yeah, they drank a lot there. That was where they did all their business, was in the bathhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so this city it's like 27 or 28 acres and just amazing ruins on it. And it was one of the most important cities because of where it's located, which is real close to the Jordan River and then in the Jezreel Valley, which are the only two places that you can get to and travel that's not over mountains. So the Jezreel Valley goes all the way across, and they can go from one side of the country to another, going just on the Jezreel Valley. And then the Jordan River, of course, goes down through it, so they would use that. So both of them were made that an important city, so that they could get back and forth to it and do business and everything. So
It's amazing
really cool.
on the food that they still do some of the process of the way they actually prepared food during our Lord's time that they still do today, especially the bread. At which I love.
Me too. The pita bread is incredible. Fresh hummus.
And they do it fresh every day.
Yes.
The olive oil is so
Yes.
healthy for you.
Yes.
That's the reason why they're in such good health.
Yeah,
is
and they
because
walk
the way
a lot.
eat.
To go on a
Right.
trip with us, and the Bible Comes to Life, we're a little bit different than other tour companies because we're educational. And you walk 10,000, 12,000 steps a day, and you're on a bus the rest of the time.
That's
So
4
it's
miles
walking.
a day, people.
You're walking
4
a lot.
miles.
So if you're thinking about going on a trip and you want to go for a vacation and just look at pretty sights, that is not who we are. The Bible
We can-
Comes to Life
that's right.
is not us. You don't want to go with us.
No, and I think that part of it is that you have to be, and we found this out when we sent 30 people to Israel, is a lot of people were not up to speed of walking.
Right.
So you might want to go on something that's a little bit lighter for you, especially if you're older and you don't walk a lot.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
the same. And even when I went with you and I had a foot problem, I sat down quite a bit.
Right.
I stopped and sit.
Yeah.
And
And there's plenty of places to do that. We do tell everybody it's paced so that every age can experience it and appreciate it. So there's benches everywhere. They cater to tourists. And very truthfully, probably the average age of the tourist there is 50 plus because they have no kids left in the house and they have expendable income. So it caters to that age group.
and how long
it
are your
works great.
trips normally?
Well, we do it a little bit different. So it's a 12-day trip. A
Right.
typical one is 12 days, but there's 3 days of travel. So you leave the port one day, you get there the next. So that's 2 of your days. You get there late in the evening the second day because of the difference in time. There's 7 hours. Then you're on the ground for 9 full days. Then you come home on the last day, but it's a straight flight back through, and you get home the same day you leave. So because, again, the difference, you gain the time. So we really have a 12-day tour that's 9 full days on the ground. So it's packed from, about 50 sites that you'll see in those times, which
That's a lot.
it's a lot. And they're very good. And we have shorter ones as well. So we do have some 8-day trips and some 9-day trips, but typically it's a 12-day tour.
Right, and a lot of pastors go. But there are people that don't use a pastor, am I correct?
Absolutely. So there's not only the Bible education, deep Bible study tours, what we call them, but there's also archaeological tours. They go and they work in the sites. So, we go to a dig site. One of the things that we do, we get to go sift the dirt that comes out from underneath the Temple Mount and from out of the city of David, which is amazing. But there's a lot of those things. So they can pick it. And that's the other thing about our company, The Bible Comes to Life, customizes every tour. So it's just a great place to travel with.
I would love to have you give our audience information on how they can book a trip to Israel. Would you please give that information out to us?
Sure. It's www.tbctl.com. The Bible Comes to Life. That's what the initials are for. And then you can just look up on there and you'll see lots of information. Go to Midwest, and that's where Jackie and I are, and that's my partner in this business. And you can call us, email us, whatever you want to do. Our information is there.
And we'll be right back on Let's Just Talk. We're back on Let's Just Talk with Pat and Rick Stirnkorb, and I'm so thrilled that you're with us today because, we've been friends forever since you and I started at that radio station, which I'm still at, WCVX 1160, and it was very fortunate that we met, right?
It was fate.
Right. We've had a lot of years of fun together, right?
Like 15, 16?
Yeah.
We figured out the last time we were at lunch. 16
right,
years.
Right.
Long
So
time.
let's talk a little bit. There's so much history in Israel, and when Israel became a state in 1948, a lot of people are confused on who owns what, right?
Right.
And so let's talk a little bit about the history of Israel and what it is today, because there's a lot of parts of Israel that are modern too.
There are. So what the historical part of it, they classify, when I say they, I'm talking about Israel, people in general, they classify things that they find three different ways. Okay, so let's just say that they're talking about the city of Magdala, because that's a newer find. How do they know that that's the city of Magdala? How do they know that it was really there, that that's there today? Is it really that city? So they have three different things that they do. One is archaeological proof. So they find something in that city that is absolutely written about. Flavius Josephus is another writer that was during that time. He was a Roman writer. And things that he wrote in his book, things that are documented in the Bible. Of course, there are other historical books as well. And if you can then revert back to other history writings, they know that Magdala was on the Sea of Galilee. Then it was a fishing village. And so when they found this, it was an act of God, no doubt, because they were digging for a new convention center that they're putting in there.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes, and 1 foot underground, 1 foot under the dirt, they were digging, and they had already had in the footers, they had rebar in, they had a huge big piece of this done. They'd been working on it for a couple years.
So what do they do then?
Okay, so what they did was they were started digging, they were expanding out, and all of a sudden they hit something, and they have to stop digging. They looked underneath it, it was a mosaic floor.
Wow.
And still intact. So they stopped. They have to call the antiquities department, the government. They come over and look. So then they start digging more. Well, they found an entire temple that was there in Magdala.
Oh my Lord.
It's the only temple they've ever found that dates back exactly to the time when Christ was alive.
So what do they do since they started digging and they put the rebar in? They have to take that all out?
It all sits still. So it's been sitting still for 8 years. And so now, since then, they've uncovered the entire village, which is like 4 or 5 acres. And they found fish pools because they know they had fish there. It was a fish sauce company or community. And so we know that because Josephus writes about it and says even in Rome, they were selling the same fish sauce that came from Magdala.
Wow.
So they know that that's where this was made, that Magdala was part of it. So historically, archaeologically, it's proven. This is Magdala, this is where it is. They know it without a doubt. Then there are other things, and then there's deep history. So that's first. Archaeological proof, no doubt about it, this is where it is. The second thing that they do is they look at deep tradition. So they've talked to people. So like, let's say Capernaum, this is where Peter's house was.
Right.
They know that the disciples, 4 or 5 of them came from Capernaum. Okay, so they have Peter's house there. Now there's nothing that has a door frame on it that says this was Peter's house.
That's right.
However, when you go back in history, this house is the one that the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother said, this is where Peter lived, this is where Peter lived, this is where Peter lived. Archaeologically, can they prove it? No. However, if you could go back in your family, they would be able to tell you, your great-great-great-great-grandmother lived in that house. Well, how do you know that? Because your great-grandparents told you that, because your grandparents told you that, because everybody down the line. So that is deep Bible tradition, or deep tradition, whether it's biblical or not. Then the last thing the next thing that they do is tradition. Tradition says that this is where the tomb of Christ is. It was not discovered until 1867. Was it really the tomb of Christ, or was it in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre? Big discussions about it. Tradition says that it's in one place for some people. Tradition says it's someplace else. Do we know where it is? We don't. But we can say that when you're there, you're as close to the tomb as you're ever going to be, because that's where it's definitely in that area. So does it really matter? He's not there anyway.
That's right.
A lot of
He
things are
rose
like
from
that.
the dead,
That's exactly right. And then the last thing that they have is what Omer fondly calls Disneyland.
What's that?
And that's any place that they have just said, okay, here's where we think this was, let's call it this.
Really?
Yeah, that's Disneyland. We don't really know if it's there. We know it goes great with the story. Was it
Right.
really there or not? Who knows? It was someplace in that
and
area.
you know, the
It's
way you
Disneyland.
look at it now, I think Omer had told us, and I know they've uncovered this, where the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre is.
Yes.
They went below that.
They did.
And what did they do?
They found an empty tomb.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was it the tomb of Christ? We don't know. It didn't have a
Right.
stone in front of it. There was nothing to roll away.
Right.
So there is discussion on both sides. I've done a lot of historical reading, and in my mind, the tomb of Christ, where we go to the garden tomb, is just wonderful. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. It's quiet. It's like what it would have been. We want it to be there. We want it to be this beautiful place. However, if you go back and read the history, probably it's in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Right. Covered.
You can't see it. It's covered up.
And a lot of places in Lourdes, in different places, they actually built over
Oh,
these
everywhere.
sites.
Yes.
And it's amazing what you do see, and people go, really?
Yeah.
And you go, really?
Yeah.
You know, because they've archaeologically figured it out, or, like you said, tradition or whatever. And it surprises you. I mean, Lourdes really shocked me. But going to Turkey and seeing where Mary and St. John, you know, where they went, was amazing. To me, that was more exciting to see that than say Lourdes, right? You went there, right?
No.
You haven't been there. Oh my goodness. To see the library in Ephesus, to go to Mary's tomb, just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's so many things, and that's the other thing, like Rick was saying before, this is a disposable country we live in. You know,
Right.
nothing lasts. It's 250 years old, and you can't find anything that's that old. We just
Right.
tear it down and rebuild and tear it down and rebuild. Well, they've been knocked down a lot of times, but they've
Right.
rebuilt, and
Right.
they have what's called a tell, and cities are built on a hill. It's called a tell. So let's say that they had a city there, and Hetzor was one of the ones. Hazor is spelled, and in that city it has like 6 layers of cities.
Wow.
So what would happen is they'd have a city there, and then a war would come. They'd fight. They'd raise the whole city. It'd be completely down to just the dirt. Then they're gone from 60, 70 years, and dirt's on top of it. Then they come back. But it's a strategic location.
Now, I want to ask Rick something. As a contractor and a builder, what amazed you?
How many times it was torn down and rebuilt?
Really? And what they build with,
Everything is limestone there.
limestone,
So,
which is really important.
Well, not in Hetzor and Capernaum. It's
Well,
basalt,
yes.
which is the dirt or
but
the
the
stone.
majority
Of
of the country is limestone.
Limestone.
And everything is painted white. That's what, but
It's
you
the
know
natural
why?
color. It's not
the natural
painted.
color, but also in a lot of countries they repaint it white if it gets dirty or there's whatever, but it reflects the sun too. I noticed that when I was in Greece, everything is pure white,
Yeah.
which was really amazing. So, Rick, what was the most exciting thing on this tour for you? You know, historically, would you say?
Just in the old city, we got to look at a lot of the older buildings, and you see all the different wars and stuff by holes in the wall where guns were shot into the limestone and just chips it away. All the slots for when they would have, history of bows and arrows, but then in newer history where they're shooting guns through those little slots.
Right.
Walking around the top of the walls where they would stood up there and fought wars from the top of the walls.
So when are you going next? Or do you know?
I don't know. Probably next year sometime.
Right.
Yeah.
Once a year is a lot, especially when you're walking that much, right?
The plane flight coming home was.
Yeah, it's the plane flight
Challenge.
coming home.
Yeah, going over, you're excited to get there, and it goes pretty quick. But coming back, it just seems like it never ends.
Well, the funny thing about it is that when I used to live in Singapore, it was 22 hours. So to
Yeah.
me, going there was nothing compared to what it was to go even farther.
We didn't talk about the city of David, and I really want to say something about it. When we were there the last time, when you and I were there the first time, not the last time I've been there, but they were just working on the city of David. They had just started excavations on it. They knew that David had a palace someplace near. They didn't know exactly where it was. They kind of had it cordoned off. And now when you go back, the a major part of this city is unearthed. So you actually get to see David's palace was right there,
Really?
and their floor is there, and the columns. And now in the last probably 6 months, they have knocked out the walls that actually lead up. There's steps that lead up to the Temple Mount from underneath David's palace and in that city of David. That, in my mind, is probably the most important and fascinating archaeological find that they have ever found in Israel, because it not only tells the story of David, that he really existed, because there are people who say he never really existed, that he's just a figment of imagination. They found Boule, and Boule is it's a piece of clay that they put their stamp in that has letters and stuff around it, so it has that says from the house of David on it, so they know that archaeological proof again. There is places where they shackled the animals down there for sacrifices. There's water troughs that run through it. It is absolutely the most incredible thing. And every time we go, they have more uncovered. It's just amazing to me.
And on that note, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Pat and Rick Stirnkorb and the Bible Comes to Life Education and Travel Center. We are back with Rick and Pat Stirnkorb of the Bible Comes to Life Travel and Education Center, and we were talking about the city of David, and I know you have some more information for our audience. Would you talk a little bit more about it?
Yes, so the city of David, which I just said is just amazing, and the last time we were there, Omer took us down into the bottom of it. So you go through Hezekiah's tunnel, which is in the Bible. It takes you back down to the pool of Siloam, which is where the blind man was healed. Okay? So you walk down through the water and you come back out down at the bottom of that, which is really cool. But in the city of David, we were in the bottom part. So they are digging archaeological finds and digging things down of it. And so we went all the way down to the bottom. And it says big sign, do not enter. And so Omer's like, no, come on in. So, because he knows pretty much everybody there. So we go into it, we go down to all the way bottom. We have to literally go off of the path, walk down into where they've been digging. And so they're outside of right where we are, they're digging the dirt and taking it out, because that's what they do. They take it out and then they sift the dirt, and if they find little things, they kick back. So we were down there talking, and he was telling a story about it. The next day, we went to the sifting site. And there's a sifting site that we go to, and which I'll show you a picture of that. And we actually sift dirt. And the dirt either comes from underneath the Temple Mount, or it comes from the city of David. Well, we were actually standing on dirt one day. The next day, we're sifting the dirt.
Wow.
So it's the coolest thing ever. But the city of David has a lot of history. If you want to look and find more about it, just go online and on YouTube and say City of David Temple, because many people believe that that was actually David's temple there, not the one on the Temple Mount. If that were the case, it changes history.
That does change history.
So it's a very interesting subject to even to talk about. It's just mind-boggling. Then we went up from there, and you go up to the Wailing Wall, and you go up to the rabbinical tunnels.
And let's talk about that with you, Rick.
The tunnels, they've carved out over time, and down inside the wall, they've kind of tunneled along the side of the temple wall. And down there you see so many different things where they've dug way down deep, and you'll see something down there. But the physical structure of that building, that temple, is just amazing. It's hard to imagine how they could move rocks that big. And one of the spots you came to, they had a big sign up saying this is the largest rock that they found in the wall so far. And it was something like 33 feet long and 6 foot tall and 8 feet thick and weighed thousands of tons.
Thousands and thousands of pounds. It's
But you
mind-boggling.
remember, they hit a lot of people back then to do this. You know that.
Yeah. And that temple was built on a hillside, so as you're walking through these tunnels going alongside the Temple Mount wall, at one point you actually get to the point where you're above ground. So instead of making it look like just on a wall there, they actually carved lines into the side of the mountain to make it look like it was stone.
Wow.
So it's
Now,
continued on.
Here's one question. How hot was it in there?
It was kind of cool. I mean, it's like being in a cave. It's probably 54 degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
That must
really
have
cool.
been Because did you go during the summertime? I can't remember
May.
the last time. May. Was it hot during that period of time?
We had a few hot days, yeah.
Right.
It
So
depends
that
on
can
where
be a
you're
really
at, yeah.
cool experience,
Yeah.
especially if you like caves
Yes.
themselves.
Yeah.
So what's the other thing? So that was amazing in itself. What else did you think about when you were there this last time?
I think the Wailing Wall has so much significance to everybody. That's one of the things everybody wants to see. They want to see the wall, and they want to see the
write a
tomb.
little note, right?
Exactly right. So you write the notes, you put your prayers on a piece of paper, and tradition has it that you take that prayer up to the wall and you put it in the creases of the wall. And so there's thousands and thousands of pieces of paper in there, and they take them out like every week.
Oh, they do.
Yes, and
That's
there's like
good because they need to put more.
they do.
right?
They put more of them in there.
Yeah.
But the significance. What was you going to say?
Well, that the wall, the reasons they pray there is that's the closest place they feel is to where the Holy of Holies was at. So that's the closest they can get to that spot.
Right, that the
Right.
Jews do.
Right.
And so when you go to the wall, it is magnificent. It's huge. How tall is that?
Oh, it's probably 70 feet tall.
I remember it was
Yeah, it's massive.
unbelievable.
And every stone that's in there, Herod's, the Herod the Great, his signature is that he has a border around every stone.
Really?
Every
It's
stone,
like
every place you see.
2.5 inches tall, maybe.
Wow.
In every single stone throughout the whole entire city. So when you go to the wall, you are standing the places where they believe is the closest that they can get to the Holy of Holies. But it's also the only wall left that's really intact of the old temple wall. And it's not, that wasn't the wall of the temple. That was the wall, the retaining wall. The temple was on top of it. But that's the closest that they could possibly get. So it has great significance. It's also where the Temple Mount is, which is controlled by the Muslims. And it's also of importance to Christians. So 3 religions,
Right.
1 spot,
Right.
which causes all the conflict.
Right. And you know, it's funny because now our embassy is in Jerusalem, which is
Amazing.
amazing.
It is.
But let's talk about the history of Herod in Masada,
Oh, wow.
which is one of my favorite places on earth.
Yes.
He was brilliant architect.
Yes.
Correct?
Amazing. The
Yeah.
stuff that was in Masada is just way before his time. I mean,
Right.
his steam bath here.
Yeah. His Masada was the winter home of Herod the Great.
Right.
And it's on the top of a mountain. It was just discovered in this century.
Right.
I mean, in the last century, because we're now in the next century.
Yeah.
So it was back in the 30s. But it was never really done anything with until after Israel became a state again. So go on, talk about it. It's incredible.
But just the history of that structure, of that mountain, and what has gone on there.
And what happened in the end at Masada,
Oh
where
my goodness, the story. of the end of Masada.
the Roman soldiers were trying to get up to the top of Masada, and the Jewish people, right,
Yeah, there was
kept
like-
him at bay for a long time.
Long time, because they had so many storage bins there. They had fresh water they could get, so
And
Right.
food.
they were able to maintain life there for a long time. And it took the soldiers
8 months.
8 months to build a ramp to get up to
That's
the
it.
To get up to
Yeah.
them. But
And-
didn't they kill themselves before
did.
that?
They did. There was like 900 people there.
Yeah. They were the last Jewish holdout. The Zealots, that was all of them left. And by that time it was 73 AD. They destroyed the temple in 70 AD. So 3 years later, they were still causing problems to the governor and to the in the city of Jerusalem. So finally he said, just get rid of them all. Go in and kill them. And so they brought in all their troops and they built a ramp to get up there to kill them all because they were the last Zealots. This was the last of the Jewish people that were left that hadn't been taken into captivity or dead or whatever, or scattered. And so this is the last Jewish holdout. And so they came in, they built the ramp. It took them 8 months to do it. They get in there and then they find everybody dead except for 5 people, 2 ladies and 3 children
And
that
what
hid
did they
out.
do? Do we know what happened?
We
to
do
them?
know, and in fact, since we were there last time, Kathryn, they divided into groups of so they took 10 men and they divided the people into groups of 90, or whatever comes out the equal amount, and then they drew lots on them, and that's how they got the people's name. They actually found, since we were there the last time, a clay piece of tablet that had the men's name on it. And it had 10 names on it they found in one of the buildings, which they're assuming that that's what it was. And then they all killed each other until they got to the very end, and the last guy that was there fell on his own sword. There's been a movie about it. There's books about it. It's an incredible story because they did not want to go into the hands of the Romans. They
So
didn't
what
want their
happened to
children.
the other people that didn't die?
The last people that were there, the 5 people that hid out, which the 2 ladies and 3 children hid in the grain storage room, and when they came in, they were the ones that were able to tell the story of it. And then Josephus ended up writing about it, and it's not in the Bible, it's not a biblical story, but it's historical. And then you can read about the whole thing, and their account of what happened, they tell it exactly how it was.
So they lived.
They lived,
Were they in captivity?
not that we know of,
Wow.
but they
That's an
could have been,
amazing
yeah.
story,
It's really
actually.
incredible, really incredible.
I thought that was one of the most magnificent sights that we did see
Yeah.
there.
And they've uncovered way more since we were there with you,
Oh, wow.
Catherine.
That's unbelievable.
With the technical stuff they have today, they have lasers and stuff. They can actually set them up and get a full picture of the mountain and all the tunnels and stuff that are inside the mountain.
Wow. Unbelievable. And we took the tram up, but you can
Yes.
walk it.
You can.
I don't
Snake
think I'd
path.
want to walk it though. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last time we went, we saw kids,
Really?
moms
Run up
walking it,
those
yeah.
steps, right?
Yeah.
Not meek.
Yeah, not me either.
So anyhow, I want to talk about you've got a new tour coming, or you've got tours all
We have
all
tours.
year,
Yes,
right?
we do. So we do not travel in the summer months. We don't travel from June until September or October, depending on the season.
'Cause it's too hot.
It's too hot, but then the Jewish high holiday month is typically September.
Right.
Now, this year it's all September. Next year it's in October because they go by the lunar calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So as the holidays change, because sometimes they're shut down for a week. They're not allowed to
Mm-hmm.
drive cars on different days. So there's no point in traveling there during that time period. So we don't do it then. So we do travel the rest of the whole entire year. So 9 months out of the year we have trips going. And we have a lot of pastors going, but we also have radio stations that go with us. We have television stations that go with us where they'll collect a group of people and they put together a trip. Then we have trips like you that are talking about doing a 7 chefs in 7 days or whatever we end up calling it.
Right. It's one of the things that I really love that I didn't get to do more of. But you can also add in the cultural
And we
the,
would,
the
absolutely.
Christian part of
Yeah.
the trip. Because I really believe that that's really important. But doing some of the things that we did, going to our friend's place that he built in a Muslim city,
Yes, ooey
Oh,
buoys.
wow.
this
Amazing.
gorgeous palace. I'd like to stay there
Yes.
personally. Hello.
Effendi Hotel is the name of it. It's Effendi Hotel.
And his name is
Ooey buoy.
Ooey Booey. And he actually comes and teaches in the United States every year, usually in Massachusetts, where he travels around. He has a wonderful cookbook, which I'm actually going to be doing some of his recipes in the next couple of months because I just love his recipes.
Yeah.
And he was such a wonderful host to us. Did you go there the last
We
time?
did not.
Why?
There's not anything
Religious
religious
about
attached to it, and we were really on a deep Bible study tour.
Right.
So, and that's the other thing we do is that we customize all of our tours. So regardless of what somebody wants to see, they've had like bad girls of the Bible that have gone and
Oh, I
done
love
trips,
that.
and you just
That's
go
fun.
around to see sites that pertain to that. Of course, they throw in some of the other ones that you just have to see, but
Right.
their studies are about those things. So there's some that are Paul's things, and then there's some people that just say, "Okay, I love the history of it, but all I want to see is where was Jesus? Where did Jesus walk?" I want.
Right,
So
right.
depending on what the person is and what they want to see is what we customize our tours for. We have no cookie cutter tours.
Right, and that's kind of the reason why I like it, because you can plan something like
Yes.
this. And I know that my Chef You and I audience, and also my Let's Just Talk audience, right, and my Kathryn Raaker's World are going to love
Yes.
this kind of a tour. And the fun part about it is that I'm going on the tour.
Yes.
Hello. And you get to cook with us.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to do is we're going to pick one person each time to work with us and to cook on the tour
Great.
with the chef that we meet and the restaurant we go to, because I just love doing that, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And there's not too many people that are doing it, apparently.
No, there's not.
So,
It'd be great.
You know, it's been an exciting time with you on our Let's Just Talk show. What do you really want to leave with people, both of you? And Rick, you can go first, and then Pat.
It's just been a great privilege, and we were first introduced to Israel
Through me.
through you
Right.
and Omer.
Right.
So
Right.
it's been just a whirlwind.
Blessing.
To see all the sites there that are in Israel, it's just amazing.
You really need to see it if you've never been there. You
do.
need to do it. When I went, Pat, it was to find my relatives and to find the
Right.
history of it. So what would you like people to be left with?
I think every believer needs to go there at least once.
Right.
When we went the first time, we thought this is a trip of a lifetime. We'll probably never go back. And then all of a sudden I find myself going back over and over again because, like I said at the beginning, it's addictive. There's more that you want to see. There's more that you want to learn. Take, the time away if you can possibly do it. Take 2 weeks out of your hectic schedule of your life and set that time aside for you because it's a life changer. It changes the perspective of how you look at the Bible. It changes the way you read the scriptures. It changes the way you view the things that are written because you're seeing by geographical sites why Jesus did this. Why was he on the Sea of Galilee where the Mount of Beatitudes is? Because it's like a natural amphitheater. He could stand on the water and talk to 5,000 people.
Right.
And you see those things firsthand, and it means so much more when you go back and read it.
That's right.
And you're reading the Bible and you say, oh my gosh, I was there. And it really changes the way you look at the scriptures.
I want to thank you both for joining us today. Would you please give the website out again?
I will. It's www.tbctl.com. The Bible Comes to Life.
And you can always go up to our website at Let's Just Talk, or Kathryn Raaker's World, or The Chef You and I, and see all the things that we do. And we'll also have information on our trip coming up. And you can always email us at kraaker123@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time on Let's Just Talk.